I also reject determinism. I wholly reject this idea that we don't have free will, and it's for the same idea. It's not here's the thing. When you look at ideas like this, I think there's two ways to approach it, which is, okay, we can argue the actual details and the merits of each philosophy, and then you can argue the pragmatism of each outcome. And since we can't prove, you can't prove it. You can't prove we have free will, and you can't prove we don't have it. And I don't know if we ever will be able to prove that, but for sure right now we cannot do that. Hence the argument. Now, then you can decide, well, since we can't prove it, let's see which functions better. And this is actually something you can prove. So the idea that there is no free will is an interesting one because it parallels some more clinical versions of this idea that are in psychology. And one of this is called the locus of control. So there's an outer and an inner locus of control. And this is, people differ on how largely they reside in one or the other, how largely they attribute their life to being to items that are outside or within their locus of control. And so this, an example would be your ability to learn a subject. You can take this challenge and decide whether it's outside your control or inside your control. The person with an inner locus of control would say, well, I can choose how often I study. I can choose the way I study. I can choose whether I seek help and who I seek help to study from. I can choose all these different approaches to improving my studying. They would focus on the ways that they can affect that challenge. A person with an outer locus of control would say, well, I don't have more hours in the day than, I'm restricted by these many hours of the day. I'm restricted by whether I can go to this university or not. I'm restricted by the socioeconomic standard that I have. Maybe I don't have access to the best tutors. I'm restricted by the knowledge that I have access to. If I haven't learned about a certain study habit, then I simply don't have access to this. And this would be someone that I'm restricted by my own cognitive abilities. I may not be as talented at math as another person who is more naturally talented. I'm restricted by my own health. If you have a health issue, you could say, well, I simply cannot study as long because I have XYZ health issue that prevents that. And so both of these are not wrong, is the interesting thing. Both of those things, the outer influences and the inner influences, both exist. But the locus of control is where the person puts emphasis in their focus on. And the people that put an emphasis on the outer locus of control have, across the board, worse outcomes, both in their actual efforts and in their health. Because this is the idea that, well, why seek out preventative care and why take extra measures with your health if what happens with your health is largely out of your control because, oh, well, I'm in a city with a lot of smog and you can name all the things that would be out of your control, versus then putting the emphasis on the things that are in your control, whether you exercise, what you eat, whether you do decide to take preventative care. So this is an interesting thing because it to me, it resembles the argument of free will or not, because it is a choice of where you put emphasis on. And this ties in to a really cool idea from Greek tragedy that we'll get to shortly.
Yeah, before you go into Greek tragedy, the thing is, and that's why I hate this argument, you say it's your choice to decide where you place the locus of control, but then people that believe in determinism say it's not your choice to decide that anyway. And see, it just becomes this.
It's circular.
There's something I'm suspicious about it. I think it's a. I don't see any positive reason to believe that you don't have some amount of control over events. I can't imagine, like, who is the person arguing
here, I'll give
this
you
is
that.
really helpful? Okay.
Yes. So here we're gonna go into the other side of the argument, because it's good to kind of, bolster that argument so we can really grapple with both sides of it. So I like to think of Hereditary as the world in which Sam Harris lives in. This is the world where you lack free will, which is things have been put in motion long before you ever knew about it, and the outcome is impending, and there's like a creepy naked guy standing in the darkness waiting for the inevitable to happen. That is the world in which, God bless him, I like Sam Harris, but I don't like his arguments against free will, because I think it's fucking depressing. And that's one of his arguments, is that, well, people just don't like it because it's hard to live that way. And yeah, of course it is hard to live that way. It fucking sucks. Why would you do anything if nothing that you do matters, because everything that you do is already predetermined by something that you don't know about? This is a very...
Has anyone asked him that?
Why does he...
No, I mean, and I'm not super familiar with Sam Harris. I know that I thought that there was some sort of maybe influence with Buddhism on his thoughts about free will and determinism, but I could be wrong about that. But what I'm trying to get at is whether it's Sam Harris or someone else.
What's
the person that truly believes this, that truly believes everything is determined, how do they... This is why it becomes ultimately senseless. Because then you ask, why do you bother waking up?
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess you could say, well, because there's a chance that everything that is determined will result in a basically pleasurable outcome for myself. It just seems very...
Not a pleasant art. This is why I reject it, because I think we have organized our society around the idea of free will. We depend as human beings that are self-aware. That's the difference between animals and the human being, is that the human being can think about the choices they make and can think about their thought process in the making of that choice. And that's really, whether it's an illusion or not, that's what makes it such an attractive idea, and why we're so passionate, most people, about the idea that they have free will. You tell someone, you take the average person off the street and you say, oh, well, you did that and I attribute it to something besides your conscious efforts, and it's offensive. It's a kind of a sense of you don't have agency over your own life, and no one likes that idea. There's something inherently upsetting about the idea that you lack control over your very self and all aspects of your life.